Hey folks, thanks for stopping by and checking out the Business Line podcast. In this show, what we're trying to do is get in front of people all over the country, all over the world that are moving and shaking in business, whether they're a part of a big business or they're starting something from the ground up. We want to get to know them. We want to get to know their journey, their struggle, and a little bit about what they love in life. We hope you check out every episode you can. All right. Well, hey, Josh, welcome to the Business Line podcast. How you doing, bud?
Doing well. Nice to meet you, Brian.
Cool. Well, just a quick intro for our watchers and listeners here. Josh Sanabria is on the line today, and I'm really excited to learn all about what you've been up to, man. When you reached out to the show and said you're interested in being a part of it, our producer Matt did a little bit digging and kind of found out about you. I was really excited to learn about some of the stuff you're doing. So if you could, take a couple minutes and kind of bring us up to speed on who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. So I am the CEO of a firm called GoArchitect. So we're a kind of design and technology firm here in downtown Chicago. And basically it's we work a lot with school districts, with governments, basically helping them plan ahead for the next 10, 20 years of like what new buildings they're going to make, what they need to repair, construct, from scratch. We do a lot of community engagement as part of the work. So basically making sure that everyone that's involved with those projects has some sort of voice. And that can be things that are, hey, we're thinking that this particular item is missing, or hey, we've noticed this issue that maybe the administration or something doesn't know about. So we do a lot of those kind of, hands-on community outreach events and programs.
Yeah.
We do some software as part of all of that. We do obviously some design, a little bit of finance, marketing. It's kind of all of that in the effort to hopefully design something that works for the community that it's for.
Very cool. Well, let's get down to the nitty gritty a little bit. Obviously, You didn't just kind of arrive and have this company to be responsible for. Take us back in time a little bit. Like, are you originally from the Chicago area or did you start out somewhere else?
No, I'm actually from California.
Okay.
But I went to college in Michigan at this tiny little school called Andrews University. It's like down here in the mitten.
You use the mitten. So,
yeah,
you definitely spent some time in Michigan. Cool. So you're not too far from Chicago if you're down there. How'd you end up in Michigan from California? Most people go the other way.
My parents wanted a slower lifestyle, as they put it. So they actually moved to North Carolina when I was in high school. So I lived there for a few years, finished high school, and then made my way up to Michigan. And it was kind of a thing where I wanted to be a little bit farther from home, try something new. So I attend it's a church called the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's a Christian denomination. And so the Andrews University that I went to was a Christian school. So it was kind of a natural extension in many ways for me to go there. And then after that, though, I did actually move back to California for a couple of years. My wife was in grad school, so did kind of move back to the old land.
We're at in California.
In Southern California, it's a city called Riverside. It's kind of halfway in between Los Angeles and Palm Springs. Those are the two kind of milestones.
So you were there, you moved away. Got educated, got married, headed back to California for a while.
Yep. Was there for a while. That's where I started working post-college, eventually started GoArchitect. Spent a lot of days trying to do things that didn't work. Some did, fortunately. We can talk about all that.
So what did you study in school when you were in Michigan?
So I have my master's degree in architecture.
Okay.
So it's kind of a package deal where you go and you do full-time school basically for a couple of years there, and you come out with your master's. And that's required if you want to go after your architecture license. And in general, it's just a good deal to kind of get it done and do the package deal in 6 years.
So you finished the 6-year plan, got your master's in architecture.
Yep.
And you got married in there sometime, or after you finished your master's, or what happened there?
Right at the end.
Right.
So it was actually quite a leap of faith. I graduated in May. My parents gave me my old family van, this like old Toyota van that barely ran, and drove it across the country with my fiance to California and basically arrived there and had like, let's say, 6 weeks to find a job and
Yeah.
find an apartment and get life going before we got married at the end of July. So there was a lot of uh, nervous moments, and I was like going to offices with my portfolio and resume physically in hand, like going to
Yeah.
offices.
That sounds awesome. Sounds like a really good, either a really good song to write or a really good little biography or like film to make about that, right? All the
Yeah,
shenanigans that happen in between.
yeah, definitely. And there's nothing like motivation, when you have 6 weeks, or else you're kind of homeless.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was that first job? What's the first gig you landed when you got to California?
So I started off with a health technology startup.
Okay.
Ironically, I did not get into architecture at first. I came across this startup who had a successful Kickstarter campaign and they had some investors from Europe and things like that. And I thought to myself, wow, this could be cool to get on the ground floor of a startup. It's exciting. And, the startup vibe in 2014 was very, very strong
Right.
10 years
Absolutely.
ago. And so I took the leap and did that. It paid basically like minimum wage. So it was a terrible job from an actual job point of view, and just tried to make it work. Soon found out that it was not all it was cracked up to be. They were not exactly quite on the cutting edge as they had presented themselves to be. And so I started looking around again, and basically exactly a year after I started there, I switched to a, we'll say, regular architecture job and got
Right.
back into the field that I studied in.
Very cool. So that was, you switched to something else. You're still in California.
Still in California, still in that Riverside area.
Yeah.
And so I worked at this second job was for a firm that did mostly architectural work for school districts.
Okay.
So, K through 12 buildings,
Yeah.
gymnasiums, classrooms, all the usual stuff that's part of a school. And I got lucky because I had a really good project manager. And, that old thing where people leave jobs, or sorry, they leave bosses, not jobs, that
Yeah. They
kind of
leave
thing,
people,
or they
not the
stay for
jobs, for sure.
bosses, not jobs. It was
Yeah.
exactly that. He and I really worked well together, and I enjoyed hanging out with him and then working with him. So we kind of just got started with these projects, and I got introduced to a type of project called a facilities master plan. And this
Okay.
will become more important later because this was my first introduction to what now is basically our core service, our core product to our customers. So I got really, really lucky, really blessed to have that specific job and for us to be put on that specific project. And like a lot of things, the junior person does most of the work.
Yep.
So I was doing 90% of everything. And so it was a good chance to kind of see what were the opportunities to improve also,
Mm-hmm.
and just in general how things worked.
Very cool. So you're at the time, you're not knowing this is going to lead to something bigger. You're just working and grinding and learning everything you can, right?
Yeah,
Good thing
just a
getting along
regular
with
9 to 5. Yeah.
your boss though. That's cool.
Yeah,
It's always a good thing to be able to kind of learn from and respect the person you're working with and for, right? Because
definitely.
sometimes that can be
Yeah.
contentious and then it's not healthy.
Oh
So
yeah.
what was
Oh yeah.
what was it about working with this individual that you appreciated the most?
I think like a lot of good opportunities, it depends on the person. In my case, though, I appreciated the autonomy. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciated
So there's some trust.
the trust. For example, it was a project where we were a part of four other team members
Mm-hmm.
or four other firms that were basically forced to work together on this one project. And so we were one of the four, and it was a good chance to meet with the other project managers from other firms. And I was able to go to the meetings. I, was able to speak up and all these kinds of things, which is nice as a 25-year-old in a
Yeah.
room of 40-year-olds. You do feel slightly out of place, but it's nice that everyone there is kind of respecting your opinion and everything.
Yep.
I got to lead out in community engagement events, which again turned out to be very useful. So practice the public speaking. I also speak Spanish, so I had to do some of these meetings in Spanish, which is always kind of interesting.
All right.
It's
There's a little surprise there. So you're
yeah,
bilingual. So you speak.
yeah,
That's
very
helpful.
useful, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So, speaking to a group of 30, 40 parents who are mostly Latino families whose
Mm,
native language is Spanish, and here I
right.
am. Like, my Spanish is good, but it's definitely not public speaking good.
It's passable,
So,
right? You can comprehend and you can
oh, definitely
communicate.
more than
Yeah.
passable. But, it
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
it, there's a leap versus like talking to your family member or your sister or something in Spanish and then like 30, 40 people all at once.
For sure. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it was good to practice that. Um, so I appreciated the autonomy, the trust. I didn't mind having to do most of the work because in a way, it's that way you can learn every component of it, which turned out to be useful. And then I didn't know it at the time, but I met somebody during that project who would come in handy later on, like
Mm.
huge, huge asset later on. So it's also just by chance a good way to be introduced to people that were important.
Yeah. Those things happen when you're in the thick of it, of the learning thing. My background is similar. Is that early in my career when I kind of switched to doing more of what I do now, but when I was doing all the work and in the thick of it, I was just
Mhm.
running and doing all kinds of stuff, probably more than I should have and needed to. But
Mm,
it came back to serve me pretty well when I went out on quasi on my own and found some business partners and got started. So
sure.
how long were you with that company before you made your next step?
Yeah, so I was there about 2 years,
Okay. So
and
it went
it
pretty
was
quick.
a journey because there's kind of a side story in there. I didn't know how to do any software programming at the time, but I really wanted to learn. And
Hmm.
so I convinced the big boss, my project manager's boss, to basically let me do this experiment. And the experiment was we had a high school project that we were pursuing. And just for some context, a brand new high school in California can cost around 150 to 200 million dollars to construct. So
Yeah. Sounds
we're
about right.
talking a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
if you are the architecture firm and engineering firm that is responsible for building that, I mean, that is tens of millions or high single digit millions of work
Yep.
for 2 to 3 years worth of work, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So it's a big deal. Obviously, you want to win. Now, the challenge is that most firms can generally do the same thing, right? At that level of like specific project, all firms are kind of the same. I mean, you might have a different designer and some might go slightly
Right.
better, but in general, they're all the same. So I was like, well, how can we stand out? And the idea was to show the school district that we were trying to think outside the box. And obviously, they care about their students. So I was like, well, why don't we make something for high school students to
Mm-hmm.
kind of just show them that we are innovative thinkers? So I proposed this app that was called B, like BE, and it
Mm-hmm.
was a Tinder for finding your future career. So basically, it had like little cards, and you could swipe left or right depending on whether you liked the career or not. And
Okay.
then it would show you like, oh, how much money can you make? How long do you have to go to school? All that kind of stuff if you tapped on the card and it flipped over, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And anyway, Tinder was also very popular 10 years
Yeah,
ago.
it was
So
a big thing back then. Sure. Yeah. Yep.
um, so the idea worked. Basically, the boss said yes, make it, and I was like, great, please buy me a MacBook. So they did.
Yeah.
Now, the kind of hard part was that I did not have the whole knowledge to make this thing. I
Right.
knew very,
You just
very
had an
little.
idea, right?
An idea, and I designed it, and I had fooled around before, but
Yep.
nowhere near the amount of knowledge I needed to actually make it. So turns out this is actually a pretty common thing for software engineers. You very rarely start out with
Yeah.
100% of the knowledge that you need. But at the time, it felt more risky.
It's like that, Josh, with a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know everything about where you're at right now, but it sure isn't where you started out going, right?
No,
So
definitely not.
most
No.
of the time it's that you're doing what you're doing and you're okay with it. But then like these sparks or you get ideas and it's usually something you have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
But you just get fired up enough about it and you just keep putting enough thought and brain power and eventually you just start doing it. I tell my son this all the time. Like he
Yeah.
wants to get from idea to doing it without the learning how to do it in between, or he thinks that he has to know everything about it before he can start.
Yeah. There's no
Right.
chance.
Right.
Almost anything really worth doing, you have to break down into small pieces.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
just no way.
So you got permission to do the app. They bought you a MacBook. Nice
Yeah.
job. That's a good. You're a pretty good salesman already.
Yeah.
And so now what? Did you just go out and try to start learning, or did you find
Oh
people to
yeah.
help you? Or
Yeah. Basically night and day. Like
yeah,
I would go to work on it, work, come home, work on it at home. I had the advantage that my wife was in grad school, so she was very busy.
yep.
So there was
She didn't
like,
need all of your attention yet.
no, there was definitely a lot of time. We didn't, don't have any kids or anything like that. We had two dogs, so that was it. So definitely a lot of time in the evenings to work on, well,
Yeah.
starting from scratch, really.
Yep.
And so I worked on that, and it actually went really well. So we launched in, what was it, like April 2017 or 16, excuse me,
Okay.
2016. And it went really well. I mean, we got on Product Hunt. Some people will know what that is, like a directory for new software.
Yep.
We were on the front page of the Apple App Store. Like it was us and Justin Bieber, like right next to each other.
Ooh,
So that
nice.
was a nice feeling
Right in
to
the
be like right
coattails
on the
of
top
Biebs on
of
the App
that.
Store. Yeah.
And we got like 30 or 40,000 downloads in like a couple of weeks. So it took off. It
Yep.
was really good. And we were able to show it to the school district, and we got in like the local newspaper, like all this random stuff to get attention to it. So that was a real nice feeling where it quite literally went from nothing to something. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
there was no code written. Now 40,000 people are on the app,
Yep.
all in a matter of a few months. So that was a huge confidence booster
Yeah.
at the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what did it
Uh,
do? What did it do for the firm as far as did it help out in the way you thought it would?
yeah. So yes and no. It did prove that we were thinking outside the box. It did bring
Yeah.
in kind of the marketing attention, all of that. I do think, though, in retrospect, the lesson learned is that you can do a lot of cool things, but unless there is a follow through and kind of a direct path from going from marketing idea to sale,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. And even if there's not many people competing with you, it doesn't always necessarily come down to standing out. And so when we did the app and we had all the users, great. Now what?
Yeah.
It was still an architecture firm. They were never going to become a technology firm. I tried to pitch that we could like spin it out into its own thing and I could like lead it, but that didn't
Mm,
go anywhere. Obviously, it wasn't really making any money because it was a free app that
right.
was for high school students, so it didn't have any revenue plans. So it was like, well, what do we do with it now? And I think that's one of the early mistakes I made is like, okay, it's there. How can I leverage this to what comes next? And I was never able to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just being young, maybe inexperienced, maybe the exact circumstance, but was never able to transition that. And, a year or so after I created that app, I left that job because there was just nothing left. There was no path to go with that, and
Right.
so it just deteriorated, unfortunately.
So how did you get to Chicago?
Well, uh, so I came to Chicago quite a bit after that, actually, about 6 years after that.
Yeah.
I've actually only lived in Chicago 2 years, almost
Okay.
exactly 2 years. So I created that app, stayed another year at that company, and then the boss I liked, he left.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely felt like it was time to do something else. Um, and then, after that kind of drama, and I actually got a job with one of our competitors who was the same person that was in that initial master plan team of four. So he was
Okay.
one of the other people sitting across from the table, and we had connected during that, couple of months of working together. And then I had seen him around town at other things where we were competitors, and I was like, "Hey, I need a new job."
Yeah,
And he's
you're
like, "All
lucky.
right, come on over." So it really turned out very well. And that was for a pretty large corporate architecture firm called DLR Group, and I worked there for a little while also before I started my own company. And actually, they're now basically our biggest client is my
Nice.
former boss, and all of the people I've met because of him.
So what I'm curious with is because all of us who end up, we're working jobs, right? We're employees for quite a
Hmm.
while, as you were. What tipped the scales to you deciding to go out on your own? Was it an event? Was it a slow fade? Was it you just felt like it was time to do something on your own? Because it's a big risk, right?
Sure.
It's a big change. Security goes out the window for a while until
Yeah.
you do something that's actually starting to work. Most people, it doesn't work. And most
Yeah.
people, for better or for worse, what they might end up going back to being an employee because maybe that's better.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
what was it for you?
So I think you have to understand the context of I have been trying and working on random stuff since like the beginning of college.
Yeah.
I helped run like a small store. I was part of a like tech support group, and I improved a bunch of stuff with them. I tried to start a crazy business where we would open up data centers in Southeast Asia.
Jeez.
Absurd ideas.
Well, absurdity, sure, but it sounds
Yeah,
like this whole time you've been working at firms, doing things, trying new
yeah,
things, but at the same time you've really just been pushing up against that wall to go over to the other side,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Definitely pushing up against the wall, trying to find everything and anything that would lead. I mean, we tried to start like a drone security company for the idea was that you had drones that would patrol your construction site and
Okay.
provide like on-demand video for a specific area that maybe was beyond, what you could take video of
Yeah.
on ground. So there was that. I mean, the coding thing, learning how to code, I created a whole mess of apps that were, for sale for $1 or something.
Yeah.
So I think it was always like I was always searching for something, but there were a couple of things that always kept me back. So the first thing is pretty obvious for most people, right? I could simply not afford to just leave my job
Yep.
randomly.
Yep.
There was no context where we would survive. So my wife was in grad school. I was earning, supporting us. So there really was no option. Maybe if I was single, I could have like lived in a $300 apartment in a bad
Right.
neighborhood or something. Maybe, right? But that just wasn't the reality. Um, Second was there was never anything that was obviously working. Like everything was kind of okay, but there was never anything that was like, okay, this is a foundation to something else, right?
Right.
So a couple of things changed. So the first, and I would say probably the biggest, is that my wife graduated from grad school, and she obviously, knows that I've always been interested in trying something. So the kind of experiment was, okay, you've graduated, now you can work, and I will stop working at a regular job and I will try to start a company. So we
Mm-hmm.
switched who was providing the income. So that was a huge deal. And that
Yeah.
kind of goes into the whole idea of finding your investors. And so it can be a spouse who's willing to work while you
Yeah.
take a couple of years to figure something out. I think that's a really underappreciated one. The second one was the people I worked with continued to be my clients after I left. So I had a very good relationship with them. We knew how to do the projects. At that point, we were already doing these facility master plan projects, and I had been doing more of them. And I had
Mm-hmm.
been programming and coding things to improve our process. So I had some things that I owned and I could offer and the experience. So there was that. I knew that was at least some sort of foundation. And then it was also just a chance to take some different risks. Like GoArchitect actually started as a book publishing company, believe it or not. So we
Nice. Okay.
had, yeah, we had authors and different people that we worked with, and we were producing different types of books about travel and architecture and art and stuff in general. We
Okay.
had at least some assets that were, we could sell and build
Was it
off of.
producing revenue?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
Now, when you look back on it, of course, the lesson that was learned is that the book stuff was a false positive. So it was a positive in the sense that it was earning money, but it's
Mm-hmm.
a false positive because to break out into the scale that you could actually have a successful publishing company, you need to sell tens of thousands of copies of whatever book that you are selling. And very, very, very few books ever do that. I mean,
Yeah.
very
High
few in
volume,
terms of,
like low
yeah,
margin, right? You just got to sell thousands. It's,
very low.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Um, Especially if you want to get into stores like, Barnes and Noble and anything
And even
like
then,
that where you're getting
look at
wholesale.
you get into a store, there's thousands of other books, you
Right.
know?
A lot of competition, which is a
Yep.
good thing, right? I mean, that's why
Yeah,
books are so
absolutely.
awesome. Like, I have, I don't know, 500 books in my house, like a
So you're a
ridiculous
reader.
amount of. Yeah, my wife.
Okay.
I mean, my wife literally reads 100 books a year.
Jeez, you're both like I don't even call myself a reader then. My goodness. That's awesome. You're more like my son. He finds things he wants to read and he just goes nuts.
Oh
So
yeah.
what do you read? What do you like to read? What's are you more of a like a nonfiction, learning some skill sets kind of guy, or are you reading fiction? What are you reading?
So I'm more of a nonfiction. I like
Okay.
biographies. I like kind of things that are about specific places. So I
Hmm.
just actually, it was a really intense book, but I just read a story about the Rwandan genocide in the 90s,
Oh my
like a true
gosh.
story of that. Oh my gosh, that was an intense book, but I
Yeah.
came out with it like a changed person, that type of stuff.
They lend perspective, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
yes, that is one way to put it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that type of story, I like history. I like even just kind of like factoid books that explore a particular, time period or invention, even
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Cool. Very cool. Okay. So
False positive.
false positive. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Like, we, I run into that with our business that we have. It's like a lot of
Mm,
the times we'll get this false positive interest in solving a problem because we're real big on our clients have problems. We'll find that problem and spin it off into a service.
yeah,
Sometimes you just hit a dead end because while you find out that there's no way that that service is going to sustain itself, you
right.
know?
Yeah, yeah, and it's tough because you sometimes you have to take the risk to even know. And yeah, I encourage people to take risks in the context of does the risk support a long-term goal that you have?
Right.
I mean, I've spent money and time on things where I look in retrospect, I'm like, why? That was a
Mm-hmm.
complete waste of everything. But then there's other things where even though they didn't work, I'm happy we did them because I either learned something or met somebody specific or created something that I'm happy with or that is useful that still supports some long-term goal, even if that individual project isn't necessarily a huge moneymaker, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times you have to go through those things that seem like a loss,
Yeah.
in order to prove that it's not a win to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
So right now, tell me about GoArchitect. What made that a winner?
Yeah. So the winner was that despite the misadventures in publishing
Yeah.
and we tried to be like a publisher of online classes for a bit, like produce them. Are you by any chance into bladesmithing, actually? Do you know anything
Oh
about
my God, I can't believe you asked that. No, I'm not, but it's funny because my kids, so I have 4 kids, but my 2 oldest,
Yeah,
13 and 11, my son's 13, my daughter's 11, they both are obsessed with the show
Forged in Fire?
Forged in Fire. My
Yeah.
gosh. Every time I go, so there's a whole other room I put together for my wife that is supposed to be her kind of relaxed room to watch
Yeah.
movies. And nope, they just, my daughter has taken it over. She's always in there. She's usually drawing some cartoons, watching Forged in Fire. Of all things, like she's a girl's girl when it comes to 11-year-old girl, but she loves that show.
Yeah,
And
it's a good
my
one.
in-laws, my mother and father-in-law, they love watching it now because every time they go to grandpa and grandma's house, they turn that on. So they have them. My mother-in-law, she can't sleep at night. She'll turn on Forged in Fire. It's so funny. I'll walk in. I'm like, okay. Yesterday I walked in and it was like, it was the international one. And it was like the 2 guys, one was from the US, one was from France. And they were, making a sword or something. But it's
Right.
addicting to sit there and watch. You're like,
Yeah, yeah, it's a good show.
So no, I'm not necessarily into it, but because of
But
that
you're
show, I'm
aware enough of
familiar
it.
with
Yeah.
kind of some of the process, which is kind of cool. So I got to ask, why do you ask?
Yeah, yeah. So you'll appreciate this. So we produced like 14, 13 or 14 online classes with different artists.
Yeah.
And the last ones that we produced, you can go to, it's called billet2blade.com.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
it's with Ben Abbott, the judge from Forged in Fire.
Oh, no
So
way. That
my
is
wife and
cool.
I, yeah, we went out to his studio in Virginia and we hung out with him for a week and we recorded him basically making 2 different knives from scratch, from absolute scratch to gorgeous finished products. And we recorded everything, wrote a curriculum, helped him launch the class, start a social media, everything. And then,
Yeah.
we sold our interest in that project
Yeah.
eventually, but it was a good project. A lot of fun.
That's crazy because a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, I'd never even heard of the show. And now like I'm talking to somebody who, put together learning programs with one of the judges. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's actually one of like, I think the best video things I've ever made. It came out really good. Really good.
So did he give you a blade? Did he give you any memorabilia?
Yeah,
Really?
we have 2. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
One of them is a Santoku, has 2 metals. Handle is like purple heart and like a black bogwood and silver. It's nice. It's very nice.
My kids are going to be floored when they find out what I just talked to. They might not know you, but they're going to know that. They're going to be, Dad, that's amazing. Can you get his autograph? I'm like, well, I haven't met the guy. Give me a break. Oh, that's cool.
He's a very nice man. Ben is very nice.
So how long ago did you do that?
We launched that class for Christmas of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the last
was in the midst of all kinds of other stuff,
produced.
Right?
Yep. Yeah, it was interesting going out to his studio because we filmed it in like, I want to say September or October of 21, and the airports and stuff were still pretty empty.
Yeah.
We went out to him in Virginia and hung out with him and his wife and everything.
How did you land that from doing what you were doing to getting that?
Yeah, that one is, it's funny because the story is so simple. The simple answer is that we were watching Fortune Fire at my in-laws' house, and my wife turns to me and says, "Hey, you should do a class with Ben." And I was
Shut
like, "Yeah,
up.
it's a good idea."
Oh.
And so I found his website from his, personal forge,
Yep.
and I told him who I was and that we had produced like, 10 classes or something at the time. And we gave him a pretty good deal. I mean, from a business standpoint, how it worked is that we put up the cost and the effort to produce the class
Mm-hmm.
in exchange for keeping a higher percentage of the royalties, and he got
Yep.
a smaller percentage. So we took the first hand risk, let's say,
Yep.
and then obviously he lent his name and Instagram and just general, celebrity status to help sell
Mm-hmm.
them. And he's a very down to earth guy, and we just figured it out, and we
So
uh,
basically, your
went
wife
at
had a
it.
great idea.
Yep.
You had the guts to make the call. You pitched the idea, and he said, "Yeah."
Yeah. Honestly, it was very like
Ah,
when you actually look at the steps, it was very easy.
yeah. It's and that's just it. Like there's
Yeah.
that whole easy but maybe not simple to like a lot of things seem we make things
Yeah.
overcomplicated, but
Yeah.
it's really not that hard a lot of the times. It's just having the guts to
Yeah.
do it.
I will say that, it did take some, let's say, ramping up,
Oh
right?
yeah, I bet.
His were the last two classes that we made. So at that point, I had already produced hundreds of hours
Mm,
or taken hundreds of hours of interview footage and all this kind of stuff, many, many hours of editing. And we built his like a standalone product. So billet2blade.com is his alone. So we didn't
yeah.
try to bundle it with anything else. So it took a lot of hours to know how to do that, obviously how to film. I mean, we had two cameras, so they're, several $1,000s of gear, audio equipment, all that kind of stuff. Um, I had written curriculums for other classes, so all of that experience with writing curriculums. So it's one of those things where the actual, like, it seems obvious now, but it did take a lot of steps beforehand. And
Yeah.
then obviously we had a portfolio to show him and be like, hey, look at all this other stuff. Yours will be even better than this because you literally have fire in your class. It's like yours is going to be even cooler than all
Yeah.
these ones.
Yep.
So, it did take some gearing up to even maybe have him be willing to do it. But his actual class was probably like the most fun I've randomly had in a garage in a while. So it was
It's
great.
just in listen to you, it's so relatable to things that I do or I know a lot of when you get a new opportunity, like you said, like your wife said, this would be a great idea for a class. You said, okay, I've never done a class with a blacksmith before or never done anything like that before, but I've done classes. And we get it all the time where you'll say, well, have you ever done specifically this for someone specifically like us before? And I'll say no, but I'll say that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And some having some certainty in your abilities and going after it and just doing it. You're learning as you're going a lot
Right.
of the time, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
why stop? Why was that one of your last ones? I mean, that seems like like a coattail that you could ride for a little bit and maybe
Yeah.
find some other opportunities.
Well, so I think a couple of things um, converged on that time period. So
Mm-hmm.
on a personal level, my wife's contract with her job was coming to a close. And so it was kind of a good opportunity where if we were going to move, we had to do it the summer of 2022. So it's like,
Okay.
okay, are we moving? And if yes, then where? So it took a little time to kind of figure out where we were going. We ended up visiting like Denver and more Los Angeles and things like that. And we ended up on Chicago mostly because we had been here quite often in college, and it's actually a really great city. I mean, I know it has some bad raps in some certain cases, but the actual city of Chicago is really nice. I mean, just to give you an idea, the city has something like 23 miles of coastline along Lake Michigan,
Oh, yeah,
and
Chicago's an
19.
amazing, it's a beautiful city. I
Yeah.
live in Wisconsin, so I
Oh,
live
there
two
you go.
hours north of Chicago. Like
Yeah.
my family and I, we were just down north of Chicago at Great America for a little bit, and then we
Oh, yeah.
go
Sure.
all kinds of places. And it's never fun to drive through Chicago, you know, at certain times of the day.
No.
But I mean,
Yeah.
it's an amazing place to visit. I mean, it's got
Yeah.
a rich history.
Yeah.
All
Tons
big
of
cities go
architecture.
through their ups and downs, and it's definitely worth a trip.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
my business partner Manny, him and his wife. So he's from India, but he has a place in the U.S. Him and his wife went to Chicago for New Year's and stayed at Trump Tower and
Oh,
downtown,
yeah.
and like we
Where they
loved going
shot
down
off
there.
all the fireworks on the
Yeah,
river. Yeah.
yeah. Some of
That's
our, I
cool.
mean, we were there a year and a half ago on St. Patty's Day when they turned the whole river green.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was something
That's a
else
lot
to
of fun
see.
too.
The whole river was as green as the green screens behind me, even though they're probably not green and after post. But I mean, it's
Yeah.
like it's a cool city, and
Yeah.
it sometimes because of whatever that happens, that sometimes city policies or whatever make things weird and traffic sucks. I know you know that, but
Well, coming from
um,
California, it's actually pretty great. So I
it's
guess
probably
it's
good
all a
compared to
matter
like
of
LA and stuff.
perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, Chicago's a neat place. I got my Sox hat on. Yeah.
I know. I noticed. I noticed that. Yeah.
So
But no, it was a good place to come. You know, coming from California,
yeah.
the Midwest, we always liked the Midwestern attitude.
Yep.
It's less expensive than Los Angeles and other options like that. So
Yeah.
always wanted to live, near the water and near parks and the tower and things like that. And
Yeah.
that's really not really possible in California. Even if you're super wealthy, there really aren't a lot of places like that in general.
Yeah.
So it was a good opportunity in that sense. So that was one kind of item, is like we were transitioning.
Hmm.
Another one is that the class with Ben did very well. I mean,
Yeah.
like we sold it during Christmas and it did well. But it was pretty obvious that it would be a product that was completely dependent on his celebrity
Sure.
and kind of, the cycle of, let's say, Christmases or when Fortune Fire would start or end or that kind of thing. So unless I wanted to just jump all in and just be like, you know what, we're going to make every bladesmithing class we possibly can, and we're going to sell t-shirts and sell equipment and just be
Really
like
promote it,
a
right?
huge
Yeah.
resource. Yeah. We were never going to make it as like a large business, let's say.
Yeah.
And when I say large, I don't even mean like millions of dollars, right? I mean, in comparison to, let's say, a media company, we would be tiny, right?
Right.
But we still needed to have what I thought of as like the vision and the unique offering and that kind of stuff. And I think we had enough to get Billet to Blade started,
Hmm.
and then, sell it to
Let it go.
somebody so they could
Yeah.
let it go and they could grow
Yep.
it, rather than us trying to like struggle through it
Yeah.
all the time, right? So I think it was more of that. And then it also coincided with the growth of GoArchitect as a urban planning and architecture firm. So we had had a bunch of projects that basically I was more aggressive about going after new projects at the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022, and
Hmm.
we basically won all of them. Like
Mm.
at that point, we had done enough of these facility master plan projects, and here we are 2 years later, and we've done 21 of them.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot in 2 years.
Yeah, our business in that area just exploded in a matter of like 6 to 12 months, let's say. So it was also kind of like, well, here's the thing that really seems to be really, really working. We've
Right.
built up a reputation, we have a unique product, and we have the right partners to carry through with these projects. I think it would be foolish to not put more of our energy into it. So it
Absolutely. Yep.
was a hard
Makes
choice,
complete
but it
sense.
was also, I think, a logical choice.
Yeah. With GoArchitect right now, tell me a little bit about what makes you guys unique. Why have you seen so much success?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it depends on, well, the world is very small, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have the niche of architecture and like urban planning, and then you have the niche within that of, let's say, government and educational civic work. And then within that niche, you have the master planning, forecasting type of world. And so by the time you get all the way down to the niche that we operate in, there aren't that many players. So I think that's one.
Really? Hmm.
We definitely know who the audience is, who the potential clients are, and who the competition is. That's one. Second, at this point, I've worked on these projects for nearly 8 years, 8, 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
So over that time, I've seen them advance from like literal paper copies with the first one to now where we have everything digitized, everything is interactive, you can run scenarios, you can, have video and 3D elements and like all this type of stuff. So in the last 8 years, we've gone from a very, very static product to a very interactive product. And so that kind of leading edge is where I think GoArchitect has found its rhythm. So every single time we do a new project, we learn from the previous 21 and we
Mm-hmm.
try to make it better rather than starting from scratch or rather than being like distracted by other things, right? So a very good example is last year we had some discussions with some clients, and community outreach is always a challenging part of the project. So, to give you some context, it's basically written into the contract that you have to get community input about what you're proposing.
Oh,
So, when you
wow.
think about it on a practical level, how do you do that? Well, you can send out a Google form with some random questions. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's one option. You can go to the schools and host like in-person meetings.
Yep.
That's another one. You could call people up, do Zoom calls, some blend of the other ones, right? All of these are really time intensive and have blessing and curses on all sides. But most people still do the in-person events. So it's like, okay, why is that worth it? Well, it's worth it because you can do the face-to-face stuff. You can do things like sticky note activities where people have like a board and they place
Yep.
sticky notes on the board. There's a lot of kind of subtle interaction elements that you don't really get from a regular survey. And you can do many people at once and all this kind of stuff. So last year we analyzed how to improve that process. And so we designed a piece of software called Engage, which is software that anyone can go to.
Mm-hmm.
It's engagebygo.com.
Okay.
And basically, it takes a lot of those in person interactive community engagement activities and makes them online. So, sticky notes is actually a perfect example. You can upload an image, you can ask your question, you can say, okay, everyone that takes the survey gets 3 sticky notes. And then we can send this survey link to tens of thousands of people at one time, and they can fill out that survey almost like they would in person, but now we're doing it at scale with everyone at one time. And we can do this for the whole district or the whole town or whatever at once. And so we wrote this software, we
Mm-hmm.
launched it, designed it, everything, and people can go and sign up for free. And now we can use it for our own clients, but we can also have it as a standalone business if people want to use it for their own work, right?
Yeah.
So it's that kind of stuff. Like we're able to see the need, we have the skills to actually write software in this case to fix the
Yep.
need, and then we're
Yep.
able to launch it and use it to our own clients or our own future clients and add it as our value proposition. So it's that kind of thing where we've done that over and over and over again at this point, now over 6 years. Um, and so it's a pretty good deal. I mean, we're able to
Yeah,
offer a pretty good product.
that's really cool. That is actually that's pretty darn innovative. So when you get that much data from something like that, how do
Hmm.
you like it's different like you go into a special event, maybe you have 10, 20, 30, 40 or more people depending on the size of the event. You get their input. Okay, it's
Yeah,
all sitting down there. It's not so much where it's what do I do with it? Okay, you can kind of organize it. Okay, we got some direction. We're going to leverage that. Now,
yeah,
when you do it to scale, are you getting how are you handling all that data? Do you take it all into account?
yeah.
Does someone just get eyeballs on all that and use the stuff that seems the most relatable to the project or you know?
Yeah, I understand. So this is actually something that plagues basically all community engagement, right?
It's like being in a big meeting and you're
Right.
presenting and you get done with it, like a class you're
What do you do?
teaching, and you
Right.
say and the worst thing you could ever do is, hey, anybody have any questions?
Right. And
Right? And then
it's all
blah.
over the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we innovated on this exact issue also.
Okay.
So you can think of sticky notes as kind of two versions, right? You
Hmm.
have the very qualitative, just open-ended, I'm going to type whatever I feel. Now, you can take people's sticky notes and you could use AI to do some sort of sentiment analysis
Sure.
or word cloud, and you can figure out, what are the top things that people said. Okay, maybe there's some value to that. We do that, but the other half of the feature we call action notes or action dots. So that's where, let's say you have an image of, I don't know, an outfit. Okay, let's just say it's for a fashion company. Okay,
Ooh, okay.
so you have a picture of an outfit, and then you, as the admin, as the builder, can place sticky notes on different aspects of the outfit. Let's say shirt and pants and whatever. And then you can ask a question about each of those elements. So you can say, what are your favorite parts of this outfit? Shirt, blouse, pants,
Yeah.
shirt, whatever, belt. And then that survey can be sent to thousands of people now, and they can rate those different outfits or those different parts of the outfit from 1 to 5 stars.
So you control the choices or you
So
control
you control the
the way.
choices and you
Yeah.
give people a quantitative way to respond to the question versus it just being completely open ended.
Wide open. Yeah,
And
that
so
makes
this
sense.
enables us to ask very precise questions like, let's say if you have a site and we have 10 projects that are potentially on the site, but we can only really afford 5 of them. We can have different action dots on all of the proposed projects on one image, and
Hmm.
people can rate them from 1 to 5 stars. And then after hundreds of people have taken this, we can say, okay, the gymnasium has a 4.7 rating, and the new bathrooms has a 4.2, but the new teacher lounge only has a 2.1,
Yeah.
poor
Then you
teacher
can dig into
lounges.
that. Okay.
So if you just went off of the ratings, you would see that the gym is the most popular versus asking this open-ended question where you're like, what type of building would you prefer? And then
Right.
everyone just types in something random. So we have all of these kind of different tools inside of Engage to help us handle qualitative and quantitative gathering of information. And then all of that can be, sent to like Power BI or Tableau or any of those
Yeah.
other kind of data analysis tools where you can show it on graphs and charts and however you would like to show it.
Very cool. I can definitely see. So that makes perfect sense why you guys are just knocking it out of the park. Um,
Takes
man,
some time, but yeah.
what's next? If I mean, obviously we don't have all evening to go through everything that's in your head, but
Yeah.
what's next? What's the big thing you want to do next?
You know, at the immediate time, we are figuring out the, let's say, national level. So
Okay.
most of our projects right now are in California or Texas,
Okay.
but there are obviously 48 other states.
Right.
even
There's a lot of room to grow there.
Canada, right? It's more like how can we take the lessons we've learned, the process, the software, just in general, the whole package,
Mm-hmm.
and create something that is applicable to more types of clients and more partners. So we don't see ourselves as competition with, for example, other architecture firms or planning firms.
Yeah.
We basically always go into projects with a partner. And that has helped us kind of get relationships that we wouldn't have gotten. It keeps our overhead way down because we don't have to like worry about a lot of other these like marketing and responding to RFP type of things. So we're able to stay lean with partners.
Yeah.
So I think it's more like how do we grow that partnership, grow those partnerships, find more, and then obviously serve them better.
Very cool. Hey, I know I've taken a bunch of your time already, and I don't know how much more you want to give me, but I
Yeah,
always
whatever you
like
want.
one thing that's really popular, I think, with the folks that watch and listen is learning about you, as an
Sure,
individual. You know,
sure.
you've gone through a lot, and you're still pretty young, so you got a long way to go. But doing what you've done, taking some risks, coming out on the side that you're on right now, um, you know, what keeps you busy when you're not working?
Yeah,
What kind of things do you like to do? What kind of lifestyle has it afforded you? Your relation, you're married,
yeah,
are you growing a family? Are you traveling a lot? What are
yeah,
you doing when you're not working?
yeah. Well, quite a lot, actually. I mean,
Okay.
I'm fortunate to live in a place where I can go to a Blackhawks game. I would really like hockey.
So you're a hockey
Uh,
man. Okay.
yeah, season starts October 17th. I'm at the
Uh-oh.
season opener, like, so, I'm very fortunate to be able to go to those things. I mean, even just in the general city, um, biking around, skating.
Yeah.
We have 19 miles of public park along the lake. I mean, it's just a great place to spend time outdoors in the summer, obviously. In the
Mm-hmm.
winter, it kind of flips. It's a great city to do things indoors. I'm part of
Yeah, yeah.
a art nonprofit where I teach classes every 3 to 4 weeks. I teach like block printing and things like that.
Oh, that's cool. I remember doing that when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we have
That
fun.
was
It's a
fun.
pottery studio, so we do
Yeah.
ceramics. Also, I attend a church on Sabbath, so on Saturday. So there's that community, that faith community. We spend time
Yeah.
together and things like that. You're going to have a diverse set of needs, right? Some of
Mm-hmm.
those can be sports, or some of them can be emotional needs, or physical needs, or,
Sure.
obviously monetary needs. No single group or person is ever going to satisfy every single one of those needs.
All
And
right.
so I think
For
it's
sure.
important to find groups that can speak to those different elements that you need in your life. And
Right.
it takes time to build those groups and define them, and sometimes you have to move groups, so to say, but I think having different groups that are part of different aspects of your personality is important. And it's unfair to expect every single one of those groups or any of those groups to satisfy all of your needs.
Yeah. So what gets you fired up the most? What gets you most excited? What brings you the most joy?
um, I think
Because
being
to me, you seem like a
curious.
pretty calm and collected guy, right?
Yeah,
You seem like
yeah.
you seem like you've got yourself, put together well. You you're obviously detail oriented. What just gets you going?
I think being curious.
Yeah.
I really like exploring new things. That can be intellectual, like learning how to program and learning how to use a new software, or
Yeah.
I don't know, even playing a new game or something like
Sure.
different type of sport. Going to a new sport, like for example, this last summer I went to a couple rugby games. I had never been to a
Rugby
rugby
is
game.
rugby is the real deal, man.
It's
Those
intense.
players, whew,
Yeah,
they're
those
tough.
dudes are those dudes are huge.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, things like that, just, and it doesn't have to be anything really grand. I mean, occasionally I just walk down different streets. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
nothing fancy, literally free. I'm just walking,
Yep.
but I think exploring new neighborhoods, the curiosity of exploring new ideas, new places, new people. I like teaching the classes. I volunteer. I don't make any money from teaching the classes. It's
Yeah.
like I like meeting the new students, and most of them are people around my age anyway. So it's good conversation. Um, I guess just trying to put myself into scenarios that are interesting to me and being open to following the curiosity where it leads.
Very cool.
It's really
Very
exciting.
cool. I think that's a good approach when you've got that kind of mindset. Keeps it open to experiencing new things, and they don't, like you said, they don't have to be grand. They don't have to be always life-changing kind of
Yeah.
events or situations.
Yeah. I mean, it can be very small. I mean, like I bought roller skates in the spring and I've been roller skating like this summer. So that's
Old
just so
school roller
random.
skates, not inline skates, like old school roller skates.
Inline skates.
Oh,
Yeah.
inline skate. Okay, so roller blades. Roller blades. I grew up roller
Rollerblades.
skating
Yeah.
in the 80s. Like
No, no.
I was always at the
Yeah.
roller rink when I was a kid. Like I was a
No.
rat. I was a
uh,
roller rink rat for a good summer or two, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I've done that before. I am better at inline because I,
Yeah.
I also ice skate.
I
So
was gonna
it's more
say, if you ice
similar to
skate, you're
that.
probably good at inline. I mean, it's not exactly the
Yeah.
same, but take some serious ankle strength and balance to get used to that. I tried
Yeah.
rollerblading years
A lot
ago,
of
and I didn't
thigh
like it because of
strength.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, thigh strength for
Yeah.
sure.
But it's a
Yeah,
it's a good community. And like with that example, right? I bought those
yeah,
skates. I go skating in the park, and then you go on Meetup, and there's a group called Skate Chicago,
yeah,
or Windy City Skaters is another one. And
yeah.
it's a group that gets together every 2 weeks, and we've done like a
Skate.
cancer, American Cancer Society marathon skate thing. We're gonna do one in like 2 weeks, another one. So it's like just a good group to
That's
connect with
cool.
occasionally and skate around.
Yeah, for sure. Just kind of keeping the skates on the ground, or are you doing tricks and stuff? You doing crazy
Oh
stuff?
no, I'm not that good. Uh, no,
That's a
I
different type of
am
risk.
still a very nervous skater. It's
Yeah.
the guy that leads it is 65 years old and he can
Whoa.
skate circles around me. He's a
Oh
beast.
yeah.
I'm a noob.
That's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay. They accept you into the group, so that's good.
Yeah, it's a good
Very
group.
cool.
Yeah. And there's nothing
Very
like
cool.
seeing like 30 people on rollerblades just going down the street. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Every once in a while, so there's a long path in between two small towns here close to where I live. Our office is in Sheboygan, and then there's a small town about 10 miles down the road.
Mm.
And then they, years and years ago, they built along the highway this path. You see a lot of people biking it or skating it and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I'll see people just cruising right along.
Yeah. Good
That's cool.
exercise.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, Josh, this has been awesome. I've learned a lot, like usual. This is one of my favorite things about doing this show
I
is I
bet.
just get to meet you guys and learn a lot from you. So, anything before we call it a day, anything that when you're talking to folks like me or doing this show or promoting your business or anything that you don't normally get asked that you wish people would give you a chance to talk about that we didn't cover. I
Hmm.
always like to give folks the opportunity to just to make sure if they've got something that I didn't hit on that they want to make sure and get out there.
That's a good question. Nothing comes to mind. I
Yeah.
think I'm always curious about why people started at podcasts. Like, what's
Yeah.
the
That's and this the okay. So a question for me. Totally open to that. And it's funny, I always forget to say this when we kind of at the beginning of the show when we're chatting is I like the dialogue. I like people to ask questions too. So for me, it was, I just got to a point. I didn't start the podcast to promote our business. I talk about it sometimes when it comes up because it's relatable when I'm talking to entrepreneurs and stuff. Cause it's like sharing war stories.
Sure.
Because a lot of the times, even though the journey is different, it's very similar, the obstacles you overcome and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest reason for me to start the show was that I wanted to kind of create an outlet for people to watch and learn about people like you, that overcame obstacles, changed direction, thought they were down and picked themselves back up, met people, created relationships, because these things can happen so many different ways. And I think a lot of the time, the traditional journey puts people into a path where they think that's it. And I that path, whether it's an employee or doing whatever it is, can be awesome. It can be just right for folks. But a lot of times people often, I've found, feel like, man, this is it? Is this all I got? Or, this is all that I'm meant for, kind of a thing. And some people, they'll get the idea, but they won't take the shot, So it's kind of like, I just want to just put enough content out there for people to find. And one show is going to be better for some than others, that where people just can catch some inspiration, And there's been a variety of folks that we've had on, and there always will be. It's not necessarily about going one direction. It's kind of given folks like you a platform to kind of share their story, share their business, because you never know who's going to see what you do and either want to do business from you or, pick up the phone and call you someday like you called Ben, So, that's really why.
Good answer.
Good question. All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up. This has been great, Josh. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been great. Let's make sure we keep in touch. If you ever plan on taking your skates to Wisconsin, look me up. There's a lot of cool places to roll around. There's Sheboygan. There's a lot of cool places up here. But I don't know if you like minor league hockey, but there's a team in Milwaukee, there's a team in Green Bay, and those are fun games to go to.
Those are fun. I have been to some of those, not the Green Bay ones, but I have. They
Green
are
Bay
fun.
Gamblers and the Milwaukee Admirals. Great,
Gamblers, all right.
Great entertainment, yeah. So
why not? I mean,
awesome. Well, hey, thanks for being on the Business Line. Appreciate you, bud.
All right, thanks.